All right, guys. Today, I'm super excited. We have somebody who is truly a friend of mine, someone who I've known over 8 years now. Someone who's, when I met him, was doing cool things, and now he's doing things on a different level. I'm super excited to not only share with you guys what he's doing now, but for you guys to hear a story, because when I heard it back in 2014, like, it inspired me. It's something that I've always like taken his story. I'm like, man, I wish I had that story. And throughout the years, our relationship has grown, and now like, this guy's not only went from being somebody who was a walk-on in college on the Utah Utes, Urban Meyers Utah Utes team, to end up playing in the NFL, scoring touchdowns, and then turning that into a fitness business where it started out as brick and mortar, just training athletes, and now he is 100% online, training like entrepreneurs and businessmen and people who are like highly motivated individuals. And the transformations is freaking insane. And I've been in the fitness industry for a decade, and I've seen lots of transformations. Like, these transformations are like legit amazing. So today I'm super excited for you guys to hear the origin story of my good friend John Madsen. So John, thank you so much for being here today, my friend.
My man, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you guys.
Dude, so excited.
Okay, I have to say this. It's not every day that I get to actually sit down in a Zoom with a pro athlete, a former pro athlete. I mean, this is elite company. So I have to just sit here and kind of take this in a little bit. I'm so sorry. It's just a little bit of a surreal moment. It's an amazing experience for me. Logan, you made this happen. I mean, like you said, you guys have been friends for a very long time. I don't know how Logan knows so many amazing people, but for some reason he just does. And I get to kind of just reap the benefits, reap the rewards of it. But Logan, thank you so much for setting this up. John, it is an absolute honor to be sitting here with you today. It's everything that Logan told me about you has just been it. I know how to spot someone who lives in excellence, and a lot of your story is something that we're going to dive into a lot, and it's something that I relate to, but I want to get us into it. So this podcast, the origin story, right? We look at a lot of people, whether they're pro athletes or they're entrepreneurs or they're investors in real estate or business, whatever they're doing. A lot of what they showcase online to their audience is flashy, right? It's cars, it's mansions, it's stacks of cash, it's yachts, all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is motivating. It inspires some people sometimes, but that motivation lasts about 5 minutes. We want people to connect and resonate with things that will help them actually make meaningful effort to change their lives. And Logan and I are both firm believers that they can't relate to success if they don't have it. What they can relate to is struggles, trials, and tribulations, really the come up. And a lot of your story of being a walk-on for the Utes and then getting into the NFL, I mean, that's just an insane story. We're going to dive into that too, but that's going to inspire so many people, because a lot of people they're in phases, Logan calls them seasons of their lives, where they're having to just continually prove themselves, just like you did when you were a walk-on. So not to drain it out too much further, John, we would love to hear your origin story.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I appreciate that intro. For those of you that don't know me, I always say my story starts, and I'm going to keep this, in a shorter time frame so that you guys can ask questions. But I always say that my story starts when I was 5 years old. I had great parents. I had parents that would say, John, you can do whatever you put your mind to, and I believe them. Right? A lot of parents say that, and maybe they don't mean it, but I believe my parents for whatever reason. And I was like, my earliest memories is of like my first memory. If I think back to it, it's of me playing t-ball, and it's of me asking my dad who won at the dinner table, and him saying like, son, they didn't really keep score. It's just t-ball. And I was like, no, I kept score in my head. I knew that we won. Right. And I think I was probably 4 or 5 years old, but that was my competitive spirit and my love for sport at the earliest of ages. Fast forward, the rest of my childhood, it was spent at basketball courts, it was spent at tennis courts, it was spent at football fields, and it was spent at baseball diamonds, right? And as I knew that I was a good athlete, I was always, one of the best players on the team. But when I got to high school, I decided that I wasn't going to play high school football, and that decision was made in one day in the weight room. So although I had played since I was 10 years old, when I got to be a sophomore in high school, the very first day of summer conditioning, I went to the weight room, and the strength coach was in there, and he was just, it was the normal story of a high school strength coach telling all the kids that had never lifted a weight before that we were going to max out on bench, power clean, squat, and deadlift. And I had never done any of those things. I had never really even considered it. I was just playing sports up until that time, right? And I remember thinking about how the deadlift looked, pretty serious, and the squat looked pretty serious. There was, there were seniors in there, and I was just this kind of scrawny kid. And I remember going over to the bench press in the corner with 4 of my buddies, and we were just kind of warming up. But as they were warming up with 25-pound plates on each side, which is 95 pounds on an Olympic bar, they unracked it, and it completely crushed me. And I was like, not only did it like crush my sternum, but I remember just feeling the confidence shatter within. Yeah. And then I started looking around at the weight room, and I was like, dude, all these guys, like some of them have beards, like some of them are jacked, like there's seniors in here. And I'm like, I can't play football. I had this epiphany that like, I literally went home and I was afraid to tell my dad. I didn't know what he was going to say. And I was like, Dad, I don't know that I'm going to play football anymore. Like I'm going to concentrate on basketball and baseball. Here's what happened in the weight room. Can you get me a trainer, or can I work out with you? Because I don't ever want that to happen again. And so that, like, there was a fork in the road where a lot of people run away from their pain, right? Or run away from their insecurity. Like I ran directly into it, because I could have just been like, screw the weight room. Like, I don't ever want to do that anymore. But in my mind, in the moment, I was like, dude, you guys might get me now, but one day, like, I'm going to be strong and powerful, and you all are going to see that. And so what happened was, I never played high school football, but my dad, I started to work out with him until he got to a point where he's like, son, I can't really help you anymore. I'm going to go get you a trainer. So he got me with this powerlifting dude that was like a straight power lifter. And this dude just beat the crap out of me for 2 straight years. I literally gained like 20 pounds of muscle, but more than that, like I went from barely being able to dunk a basketball to doing 360 dunks. And so my power increased, my strength increased, but really my self-image increased, the confidence inside of me increased. And so I had this love for strength and conditioning in that time period. And it gave me the confidence that I needed to go to junior college, where I didn't have a scholarship for basketball, didn't have one for baseball, the 2 sports I played in high school. And I tried out for football on a whim when the basketball coach told me that there wasn't any room on the roster. My dad looked at me and said, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm going to try out for the football team. And he looked at me like I was kind of crazy, but again, he was a dad that had that belief in me. And we walked over, knocked on the football coach's office, and I said, look, I haven't played football since I was, in 9th grade, Little League, but I think I can be a pretty good wide receiver, and all I want's a shot. And the coaches looked at me like I was crazy and said, you can try out, but we can't promise you anything. And that was my entrance into that one chance that changed my life forever and ultimately took me to the NFL.
Dude, that's so wild. Okay, so let me just highlight a couple things, and then I want to ask some questions about this. So it was really like a moment in the weight room, ironically enough, that is the industry that you're in now, that not only did the bar physically crush you, but your confidence got crushed so much so that you decided that in that moment, football was not the sport for you. Is that right?
Yep.
And then after that, you went to your dad and said, hey, I want to get a trainer because I want to get bigger, I want to get stronger, I want to have more confidence. And then so that was like your sophomore year that happened. And so by the time you got to be a junior, senior, it sounded like you packed on some size, packed on some muscle. Was there ever a moment in there where you're like, maybe I should play football again? Did your dad ever say, hey, maybe you should play football again? Did the coach pick out you say you should play football again? Like, was there ever another conversation that happened somewhere in between sophomore and obviously when you graduated?
Yeah. So like when I was a sophomore, picture me like as a 6'1", like 140-pound kid, right? As a junior, I was 6'5", like 150 pounds. So like super scrawny, right? And then, but by the time I was a senior, I was 6'5" and probably 185. So like to me, like right now, you're like, that's still really skinny. But to me, that was 30 pounds bigger. And my confidence was like, 100x what it was. And so I had this, I did have this athleticism where the football coach, by the time I was a senior, was literally begging me to play. And I would I remember being so close multiple times, but then at the end of the day, I was like, dude, I'm going to go play in the NBA. Like professional athlete was a dream. The problem was, although I was a starter on my high school team as a junior in basketball and as a senior, My junior year, we went 0-20, and my senior year, we went 1-19, and we set all kinds of state records for being the worst team in the history of Utah basketball. So I was not getting recruited, dude. We lost my senior year. We lost like 10 games by a buzzer beater. It was the craziest thing.
Wow.
And so anyways, I'm on a 1-39 team where nobody was getting recruited on that team. So I took that highlight film, like the highlights that I did have of basketball, and Snow College was like an hour and a half away from my home in Salt Lake City. I was the first child, so it wasn't like we knew really what to do at that time. So the only school that I applied for was literally Snow College, and they gave me half tuition because of my grades. So that was the only option. So I'm like, well, cool, I'll just go walk on to the basketball team. So at freshman orientation, I set up a meeting with a basketball coach, and I'm like, hey, this is my story. I want to play for you. And he just looked at me and said, John, I don't know if you can play basketball or not, but I'm telling you, like, there's 0 people that we can add to our roster. We have a full team coming back. And so as a mentor, I'm just telling you, if you want to play basketball, you're going to have to do it somewhere else. So in that moment, I could either I would have had to sit out a half a semester and figure out where I was going to go walk on, or B, dude, it was like a knowing when my dad asked me what I was going to do, that I said, like, on that spot, that I'm going to go play football. And it was like that decision led me to go knock on the football coach's door and hand them a highlight film of me playing basketball. And in my own mind, I thought it, like, I didn't think I was crazy. I was like, dude, of course I can play.
Dude, that's so good. That's so good. So you knocked on the door and you gave the football coach your basketball highlight reel. I haven't played, like, when's the last time you played football? Was it as a freshman?
Ninth grade. It was ninth grade, which wasn't high school. It was Little League.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so obviously he ended up saying yes. So walk us through that transition of, like, playing football again. Like, what were some of the things that you experienced, some of the feelings, some of the lessons that were learned in that first year of playing junior college?
Yeah, so I got out there to tryouts, and I realized really quickly that, like, I was like, I didn't know what cover 2 was. I didn't know what cover 4 was. They're talking about stuff, and there's people on here that, like, didn't play more than high school football, but they know what a cover 2 defense was. Like, in Little League, we didn't learn that stuff. So they're speaking a different language. So I was like, I was the guy in the wide receiver meeting room, like, not knowing what anyone was talking about, but also not raising my hand. And so I was messing up a lot during tryouts, but all I did to make the team is I knew I was fast. I knew I was 6'5", and I knew I could jump higher than anybody on the team. And so I literally would tell the quarterback, I'm like, dude, I'm just going deep, throw it up. And I started making, like, ridiculous acrobatic catches, like jumping over DBs and stuff. And the coaches knew that I was really raw, but 2 weeks into tryouts, they were like, John, I don't know if you're going to play this year, how much you're going to play, if we're going to have to redshirt you, don't know, but you do have a spot on this team. And I'm telling you right now, if you spend more time in the weight room and you learn how to run routes and learn a little bit about football, you literally could play for as long as you want. And that was like, and from the time I was 5-7 years old, if anybody asked me what I was going to do, it was professional athlete was the thing. And so that was the first moment where I was like, dude, like, my dream can come true. I'm pursuing it the right way. And so I just lived in the weight room, and I lived after practice with the quarterbacks, trying to perfect every ounce of my game. That first year I redshirted because I didn't know anything about football. I played one more year at Snow College, which was my redshirt freshman year. And then I transferred to the University of Utah during Urban Meyers' first year as head coach, and had a 3-year career at the University of Utah.
That's awesome. So for everybody out there who maybe has never gone through that process of, not, like, number one, even playing college sports, but transferring from a junior college into a Division I college, like, what does that process look like? Are you getting recruited? Are you out there, like, pushing out game film? Are your coaches, is that their job to push out game film? How does that process work?
Yeah. So I started getting a lot of attention because, again, I was a big receiver at this point. I was probably 6'5", 205, right? So I'm like, I'm starting to fill into my body a little bit, and I could run and jump. So during that year, I had, like, boxes of letters, handwritten, phone calls, every D1 school in the nation. So I was getting recruited, and people were getting more serious. Cool. But everybody knew I had one more year to play, right? And so usually you're going to graduate, get your associate's degree, and then transfer for 2 years. And that was my full plan. However, Kansas State was a university that came in really late, and they're like, look, we have some injuries. We're thinking about, possibly giving you a scholarship, and, be ready because we might, we might come calling for you. And so I was like, oh, dang, dude, Kansas State was pretty good back in the day. And so I was really excited about that. One time I was driving home though from Snow College to Utah on the weekend, and one of my teammates randomly said, John, dude, there's a new coach that's coaching the University of Utah, and there was an article in the newspaper that Urban Meyer was just trashing his wide receivers. He's like, we got a great team, but the wide receiver core here needs a lot of work, and until we fix that, I don't know how many games we're going to win. And so he shows me this newspaper article, and he's like, you should just go see what they say. And I was like, dude, that's a pretty good idea. And so unannounced that weekend, I drove up to University of Utah, didn't have an appointment with them, found their football office, had my highlight film again. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to go talk to Urban Meyer. Like, that's cool. Like, I didn't know how it worked, And so I get to the football office, and the secretary's like, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, my name's John Madsen. I play for Snow College, but I want to transfer here. I want to talk to someone about transferring here. Is there somebody I can talk to? One of the coaches walked by and looks at me and then asks, the same question. I tell him the same story. And I just listened to him go into the first room where there was a meeting taking place. And he's like, there's like a 6'5" junior college wide receiver out there that wants to talk to somebody. And Urban comes out, and the wide receiver coach comes out, and they look at me and they're like, come into my office. And then they're just grilling me like, what's your story? I'm like, well, I never played high school football, but I played a year in junior college. I want to transfer. Kansas State is kind of recruiting me, but I want to play for the University of Utah. And they're just looking at me like, this kid's crazy. And so Urban puts my film in, and it like half the plays are me playing basketball, just like dunking over people and stuff. And then we get to a couple football highlights of me playing at Snow College. And there was one of them where I just come across the field and just annihilate someone with a block, like knock out like one of the linebackers, right? And he just shuts the film off, and he's like, dude, I don't care if you ever catch a single pass for the University of Utah, but if you block like that, I'll pay for your schooling. Wow. And so like that caught his attention, and he's like, I'm going to find out about you. So I'm going to call the coaches, go back to Snow College. I'm going to see what the heck your story really is. And 2 weeks later, he called me on the phone, and he said, can you come to the office? And I'm like, sure. So I drive up to the football office, and I'll never forget that day because he sat across from me and he said, and Urban has this way of like just making you feel super uncomfortable for anybody that, is a college football fan. So he's just like looking at me, and I don't know what to say or do. And he's like, do you want to be a Ute? Do you want to play for the University of Utah? And I said, yes, sir. Like, that's my dream. Had tickets growing up to watch these guys. And he just stood up, shook my hand, and said, congratulations, you're a member of the University of Utah football team. And I just got out of the office as fast as I could. So I walk out of the office. I call my dad on the phone. I'm like, Dad, you'll never believe it. Urban invited me to, play for the team. And my dad's like super excited, but he goes, did he give you a scholarship? And I was like, I didn't ask. Like, I think so. I don't know. Right. And he's like, well, we got to find out, because how are we going to pay for school if not? And I was like, dang it, I got to go ask him. Right. And so I didn't ask him for like a week because I was too scared. And I knock on his door like a week later, like very timidly. And I was like, and he just looks at me like, what do you want? And I was like, Coach, I was talking to my family, and my dad had me come in here and just, wonder about a scholarship. Am I on scholarship? Am I not? Like, what's the deal? And he's like, John, you've played about 10 minutes of football in your life. I can't give you a scholarship right now, but I promise you have my word. If you play for me, if you're actually a player in the games on Saturday, I'll pay for your schooling if you contribute to this team. That's the best I can do. But right now, you have a shot to walk on. And I said, okay, thanks, Coach. And I walked out of there, and I told my dad, and he's like, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, Dad, I'll figure that out later. Like, let's just take out a loan. They supported me as much as they could, but I'm like, I'll figure that out later, man. Like, this is my shot. So that's how it started, man.
Okay. That's freaking amazing. Like, that's just straight up amazing. I was thinking of another, adjective for it, but I'm like, nah, amazing is the right one. I wanna highlight something. It's interesting. I've seen this pattern. There's been 3 critical times where, the first one was where you were in the weight room and you pretty much got crushed, right? You got crushed. And then the second one was when you went to go play basketball for college, and then you got denied at the front door, right? Because it just wasn't enough for him. And then the third time is basically when you decided, hey, I want to go do something a little bit bigger, a little bit better. I want to go and play for Utah. Each of these three times, you've been basically met with this issue, this roadblock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each of these times, you've stubbornly, very stubbornly confronted it. The weight bar crushed you. You went and you were like, hey, I'm just going to go become strong as hell. And then you went ahead and did that, right? You want to be a collegiate athlete. You couldn't do it in basketball. Well, you went ahead and did that in football, right? You weren't getting what you were really looking for, playing for maybe a lower tier school. You confronted that and went and literally walked into the man's office and made it happen then and there. There's a lot of people, I think, naturally, most people aren't wired that way. Most people that I've met, they would have buckled each and every one of those times and just stopped. And that's human nature, and that's okay. What do you think, contributed? Because that is some very rare wiring. What contributed to you having that type of approach?
Yeah, I was the most fragile doing it at Snow College. Like I remember being in that tryout, like, I don't know if this is going to work out, but when it worked out, it's like my belief grew in myself. Right. And then over time, as I continued to do this, like today, if you were to ask me what my superpower is, I would say I have relentless self-belief. Like I'm a person that like, if I lock into something, I'm the person that's going to go pursue it. And it doesn't matter how many times I fail, like I'm locked in on that thing. It's how I built my fitness business too. Right. And so I think a lot of times when I'm just listening to people, I've noticed this pattern in most people where they're waiting for somebody to give them permission to go for their own dreams. Right. It's like they almost need to be like, have somebody give them permission. I just gave it to myself. I literally gave it to myself. I'm like, I don't like, if that door is not open for me, I'm going to go open it. I might go through it. I might kick it down, but like, if that's the door I got to go through, I'm going through it. And I like, that's in my coaching program is fitness now, but like my message is like, give yourself permission to win, because whether it's business or fitness or this sport thing, for me, it's like everybody's waiting for somebody to give them the okay that they can go do this thing. And it's like, we all have the power within to just give ourselves that permission. And so for me, like I stumbled on it, and then it just became a repetitive pattern, because there was one more story that we didn't get into, is as I was going into my senior year at the University of Utah, after winning a Fiesta Bowl championship, scoring a touchdown in that game, Mel Kiper had me as one of the top 5 receivers to come out in that next year's draft. So going into like my senior year, there's 3 games left. I've caught like 55 balls. I'm leading the team in receptions. And agents are calling my phone just nonstop. They're like, you're going to be, depending on the combine, you can be a late first round, or you're going to be, second round, first day. And I'm like, dude, if I go to the combine, I'm going to blow it up, because that's actually what I was running, jumping, and all that, like that stuff is what I was great at. Right. And 3 games to go, I broke my leg in a game. And so I break my leg and I can't run for 10 full months. I don't get invited to the combine because I couldn't run. I don't even have a pro day where scouts came out twice to the University of Utah to watch me and just see that I was okay. And I just couldn't run. And so I watched the draft and I go undrafted. Oakland Raiders gives me $5,000 and a plane ticket to come try out as an undrafted free agent. And then when I get to training camp, they go, oh, by the way, you're a 6'5", 225-pound receiver. Mr. Davis says that if you're going to make this team, you're going to do it at tight end. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the smallest tight end in history at 225 pounds. Right. And my agent's like, dude, it's okay. Like, just, you'll make the practice squad this year, best case scenario, and we'll put on weight and go from there. There's 9 people on the depth chart at tight end. And they're like, in the NFL, they're only going to keep 2 or 3. And so I'm sitting there like halfway through training camp, just going like, man, I'm like, there's 0 chance I make this team. And then all of a sudden, a couple guys get injured. They call my number. I start just balling out of control in training camp. Preseason games, I have 2 great games. And then at the end of it, I literally make opening day roster as a tight end for the Oakland Raiders as an undrafted free agent, a position that I've never played before. And so like at that moment, it's like the self-belief inside of me was like, that was solidified. So like that was the piece where, like, even in business where Logan met me, 4 years ago, and we went through, running gyms where it was like a rocky road for me. It was like at that point I had relentless self-belief that if you gave me enough time, that I was going to freaking figure it out. So that now is a huge superpower within me.
Dude, so awesome. So it's cool because these are stories I haven't even heard before, and I want to touch on the NFL. I think that's like I know you have some cool stories from there, but I want to go back to this broken leg because you're sitting there with, like you said, like you see all the things like the combine's in front of you, and all the things that the combine does, it highlights the things that you're already good at, and then 3 games before it happens, you break your leg. So walk me through a little bit about like what were some of the feelings, the emotions, some of maybe the stories you're telling yourself when that happened, where you're like, shit, like this is like, was it defeating? Was it motivating? Kind of walk us through that moment in your life when you
It was
really fractured, your dreams got fractured right in front of you.
I remember like just like the initial thing, like in the locker room right after it happened. I'm like, I'm hurt bad. I don't know to the extent of what it was, right? I didn't know that all the ligaments in my ankles were dislocated and all the stuff that was going to have to get fixed. But like in my mind, I'm like, oh, dude, like I'll come back for just like any injury, right? But then they started talking about, getting me into immediate surgery. And then my question through the pain was like, when can I come back and play? And in that moment, they're like, we don't know. Like it could be a year, it could be 6 months, it could be, we just don't know yet until we look at the damage. And in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like combine's not going to be there. The draft, who knows? But even through that, like I always knew that I was going to play again. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt that I wasn't going to be healthy at some point. It was just supremely defeating that like I almost felt like I had $1 million. If I got drafted in the second round, there was going to be $1 million just deposited in my bank account in a couple months. Yeah. So, dude, I was always like, I wanted that 100%. Like I loved football, but I also wanted that $1 million. And so there was the defeating part was knowing that I got $5,000 in a plane ticket when I was this close to the million, right? I was this close to the million. And so like I knew that I was going to come back at some point. I just didn't quite understand how hard the road would be as an undrafted guy versus a player that was drafted. Because in the NFL, it's a business, right? If they give you $1 million signing bonus, they expect a return on that investment, right? So that person is going to get all the reps. That person is going to get they're going to have a lot longer rope. They're going to have, a lot easier segue into the team because they're like somebody was pulling for them to come on the team. When you're an undrafted free agent, it's like you're a redheaded stepchild. They don't give a shit. I don't know if I can swear on this. They don't give a crap about you, right? That's just like you're a little pawn, and no matter what happens, like they're not invested in you at all. So usually maybe one undrafted free agent each year for each team would make opening day roster on average. Maybe one, maybe two on some teams, some good years, right? And there's usually like 30 of us. So like just being able to do that was pretty surreal, but it was super hard. Every single day in the locker room before practice, it was game day for me. I'd be like giving myself pep talks, like lacing up, like, dude, I gotta bring it today, right? Other guys can take plays off. Like I had to bring it every single day.
So let me ask this. Being in that position, right? Being in basically the undrafted free agent position and not getting that $1 million signing bonus, because when you're training, when athletes are training, they go tunnel vision. The best ones, they go tunnel vision. They absolutely do. They become obsessive. And it's like, whether it's 8 a.m. at breakfast or it's 10 p.m. at night when you're chilling on the couch, the reality is a lot of times you're either training or thinking about training. And if you're not doing one of those two things, you're thinking about the future where you're an absolute all-star. So you spend a lot of time visualizing this achievement, and to have that basically taken away from you at the last minute, right? And I know there's like two sides of this that I can see. I can see how it can be absolutely defeating and crushing because you've spent maybe years of your life visualizing this one goal leading up, and especially that last 2 years prior to it, that's probably all you were thinking about. Mm-hmm. And then to have it taken away, but that now you're in the underdog position where basically it's like you said, every day is game day at that point. Did you take that as like oh crap, did you take it as something that's defeating, or did you take it as something rather on the other side where it's maybe a little bit more empowering?
Dude, it's all I ever knew. Right? It was when I walked on at Snow Collar, same thing. Like I got that one chance and I had to run with it as a walk-on. When I got to the University of Utah as a walk-on, I literally had to feel like that every single day too. And so that was like the third time that it was such a familiar face for me to just like feel like there was so much doubt around me that I had to supply my own faith, right? It's like I felt, and maybe this was a game in my head, but I felt like everybody doubted me. And so that was kind of the fuel and the chip on my shoulder that I learned to utilize at Snow College. I remember feeling like I'm not coming back home to West Valley City, Utah. I told everybody that I'm coming here to play football. Not a single person that I grew up playing football with or at my high school believes that I can do it, because their minds are blown that I'm even trying to do it, because I wasn't out there on Friday nights. And I'm like, I'm not going to come home and let them be right. Right. Same thing at the University of Utah. I'm like, now everybody's like, he'll never play at the University of Utah. There's no way, right? He never played high school football. I'm like, I'm going to show every single one of you. And then in the NFL, like, oh, undrafted guy. So it's like, I don't know if that was a true stories, but those were the stories that were playing in my head. And that was how I geared myself up to get the best out of me. And like, ultimately, the moment I felt like I didn't have to prove anymore, that was when I got cut. And like that became an even bigger problem. It's like I was so used to like trying to prove everybody wrong and using that fuel. Like I didn't know how to like harness that power 3 years in, when I was like, dude, like I made it. I scored a couple touchdowns. Nobody can say anything. I have jerseys hanging on the wall. I've had news stories written about me. Like nobody can say anything. And then it was like I let my guard down, and it was like I lost my edge a little bit. And that's ultimately how I got out of the league.
Yeah. So walk us through how many years did you play in the NFL? Kind of what was some of your experiences, some of the lessons? I think you told us a really valuable one at the very, how you got out of it. But what are some of the positive things that you learned? Maybe some inside information that obviously like not very few get to play in the NFL. And also, like, did you end up staying at 225 pounds, or how big did you get up to play?
I ultimately got to 250. And the funny thing is like you think like the NFL would have all the resources, nutritionists and like everything, and they have people on staff, but literally like it's like you want to gain weight, eat more, right? Yeah. It's like there's got to be more to that, right? There's got to be more. So I was like eating more of the wrong stuff, and so 250 actually, like I have pictures of me, and back then I was like, oh, I'm big, I'm 250. I'm like, dude, like if I would have known actually what I know now, I could have been way better from just a nutritional, standpoint on how athletic I could be and how much leaner I would be at a higher weight. So I ultimately got to 250. I usually played around 240, as like I'd weigh in at training camp at 250 is just like sloppy water weight, and then kind of come down to about that 240 range. Like the NFL is such a big stage, right? Like I was the biggest lesson, honestly, for me, if I had a lesson that I can like hang on to for the next 20 years of my life, it would be I didn't know how to motivate myself to be like great. I was so used to motivating myself to not be a failure. I didn't know how to flip the switch. And I feel like that's such a good way to like kickstart someone's motivation, right? I wanted to not fail so bad that I was going to prove everybody wrong. But when I got there, I didn't like it was enough for me. It was like, I'm good. And I don't want to make that mistake in my business life, in my relationships anymore. It's like, it shouldn't have been about the goal. It should have been about how excellent I can be. Like, I'm not going to reach my potential ever, but I'm never going to stop chasing it. And I feel like that third year when I got cut, to answer your question, I played 3 years. That third year when I got cut, I stopped chasing that like I stopped pursuing that excellence. I thought that I had got there. And I made a fatal mistake in thinking that the race was over, when the race is not over until our last breath.
So when I met you, it was 2014, came down to a seminar at your gym, Chad Wesley Smith, Juggernaut, right? And so you were obviously in the fitness industry at that moment. You had a gym. I had just started my gym probably about a month before that. And we were down there for a powerlifting seminar. It only lasts like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I can remember Chad looking at me like, you guys drove all the way down here for this? Like that was, he's the guy who was putting it on, right? I was like, no. I was like, I drove down here to hang out with you. and you and him were going to lunch. And I was like, I'm coming. Like, you guys didn't invite me. I just like, I'm coming.
There you go.
Where are you guys going? Oh, you're going to Five Guys. And so me and my buddy who I brought, we went and hung out with you and Chad Wesley Smith, and it was great, right? Obviously, like Chad was the one who I was going down there for, but what I ended up getting was that I ended up getting the relationship with you, right? And we kind of stayed connected over the next couple of years. And so tell us a little bit about you making that transition from professional football to how did you get into the fitness industry?
Just like similar pattern. I was working out at 24-hour fitness, trying to somewhat stay in shape, thinking that I might get another shot in the NFL. So I'm working out. Plus, I always love fitness, going back to that 16-year-old story and skinny, scrawny kid in the gym. Like fitness has been a part of my life since that moment. So I'm working out. I'm just warming up, and I watch two high school kids get trained by a trainer, and they're doing like a bunch of ladder drills. And, you know, they didn't know, but I was like, in my mind, I didn't know a lot about strength and conditioning at that time, other than my experience through, you know, D1, you know, training through D1 sports and also through the NFL. But I was watching these kids, and I watched them for like 20 minutes, and I was like, their parents are wasting money. They're not getting what they need. I don't know who that trainer is, but he's literally wasting their time. And I'm like, I had this epiphany. I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back home. I was in Arizona at the time. I'm going to go back home to Salt Lake City. I'm going to open up a gym where people know me, and I'm going to train high school kids so that I can teach them all the lessons that I learned that can help them get scholarships that I wished I would have known. And I'm going to do it in a strength and conditioning way. And true to form, like I literally have that idea. I go to my computer that night and I rip up a business plan, like 14 pages. I don't even know how to write a business plan. And I'm like calculating numbers. I'm like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I fly back to Salt Lake City, put my house up for sale in Arizona, and sign a 5-year lease in a gym. I drop like a, you know, 150K on equipment and awesome turf. You didn't see that gym. That gym went out of business in 16 months.
Wow.
But I put all the rest of my NFL money into that gym. And that was like what I was going to do. And then I realized that I really didn't know technically a whole lot about strength and conditioning, because my degree was in economics. And although I had a lot of experience in strength and conditioning, I didn't know a lot about it. However, I opened up anyways, and I just like go full steam ahead of like studying like all of the mentors that I had in the beginning with strength and conditioning, so that I could enhance my own knowledge. And ended up training high school kids out of that gym. I knew nothing about business. I started to get a little bit of a following because kids like would come to the gym, and I was young enough at that time, 27, to really relate to the kids, and I really knew what they needed. And so that there was like the haven for like, they're going to come in and get work done. And so although like my following started to grow, business sense, I knew nothing. And 16 months later, I was like, yeah, my bank account's at zero. I literally don't have any more money left. And I got to shut this gym down and get out of this 5-year lease. And so over a weekend, me and my dad and a couple of the kids took all the equipment out, put it in my garage, sold it for pennies on the dollar. And that was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Monday, I had talked to somebody who was a University of Utah football fan who owned a gym. And I was like, look, you know, I have like, can I just train out of your gym for a year until I get my bearings back and open up the next gym? And so the next gym was like second iteration of John Madsen Performance after a year just kind of hiding out in somebody else's gym. But it all started with that idea in 24-hour fitness, where it's like, I know what to do. I'm going to go do it. And I don't think about all the reasons why I can't do something. I've realized like there's a million things that if somebody were to sit me down and be like, dude, have you ever thought about marketing and branding and the legal, like what's the legal structure going to be? How, like, I would be like, dude, that's too much information. I'm just going to go train kids. And so I tend to do stuff and then learn all the lessons as I go.
Yeah.
You realize the pattern is there again.
Is there? Yeah.
The pattern is there again. You started the gym, right? And you were basically leasing someone else's place. Within 16 months of being business, it went out of business. And instead of buckling and deciding, okay, fitness industry sucks, I'm not, like, the gym industry sucks, I'm not doing it. No, you're like, all right, I'm just going to go figure out a better way to do it, or a way that's going to last a little bit longer. And it's like, this is at least the fourth, maybe fifth time so far that this pattern is there. And like, and again, it goes back to showing what you highlighted earlier, which is, I can see this just by knowing you for this very short amount of time, it's relentless self-belief. Just because this failed right now in 16 months doesn't mean I'm not meant to do this. It just means that I messed up a few times along the way. And every time I mess up is another time that I get to figure out what actually works, which is so amazing to see. And it's like, as a young entrepreneur, you know, I'm less than a year in the entrepreneurial space, and hearing stories like this, and it's inspiring, and it goes to show that at the end of the day, the self-belief is the most important thing. And I want to highlight this because you just talked about this. You didn't know how to set up a formal business. At the end of the day, you're going, and you know, it may be the strength coaching industry, you know, the gym industry, but at the end of the day, it's a business. And maybe one of the reasons why it fell apart, you know, in 16 months was that you didn't have that formal business structure. And I think, you know, an element of that is growing up as an athlete, you had coaches who were your mentors. You probably had a nutritional coach at some point in the NFL. You had coaches through, you know, high school, through college, through the NFL, who basically guided you through it, right? And they guide your hand throughout the entire way. Now that you're on your own as an entrepreneur, it seems like at least for those first 16 months, you didn't have a business mentor to kind of, you know, allow you to learn from their failures or learn from their experience. You had to suffer through it on your own. Was there a time where you eventually did sit down and get a business mentor?
Far too late in the game. Far too late. Like Alex Hormozy was kind of that first. Well, I guess technically not the first, but like the real first one in my mind. And I waited so long. Like that's the one thing that's a life hack for anybody listening. Like if you want to know how to do something, just find somebody who's doing it and who you can pay to teach you that thing. And like I could have eliminated 5 years of very painful lessons if I just had a person tell me what to do, because my family wasn't entrepreneurs, right? Like this was me kind of on my own trying to figure it out for far too long. So what you just said, dude, is like gold for people thinking about doing something. Literally pay whatever you got to pay to somebody who has a track record and who has already done it, and just do what they say. And of course you can go outside the lines at a certain point, but do exactly what they say until you're really successful. And that's going to save you so much pain, because again, like I remember being in the attorney's office and they're asking me about legal structure and tax structure. And it was like they were speaking Portuguese. I'm like, dude, I literally have no idea what you guys are talking about. And it's frustrating me just being there, like opening up bank accounts and merchant stuff. Dude, there was not one thing that I knew how to do. And good thing for me is like I didn't get like paralysis by analysis and stop everything. I just did it and learned the hard way. But if I had a mentor, it would have saved me so much pain.
You know, it's funny you brought that up, Sam, because of that interaction that John and I had down in Utah in 2014. We had got friends on Facebook, and John actually reached out to me. He saw that I was actually doing Alex's program, and he reached out to me about it. And he's like, I don't know if you had already signed up for it or if you were thinking about signing up for it, but I was like, I didn't even think about you, John, because you were only training athletes. Like you didn't, like at that time, you were not training adults. Like you were only training athletes. So kind of where did that happen to, where you decided that you were like what sort of limiting beliefs did you have around training adults versus athletes? And how did that transition also help you kind of move your business where it is now today, where you train high level adults, right?
Yeah. I wanted to train athletes. I was like, I love doing it. The problem is when I got married and, you know, now I was trying to support my wife and, you know, I wanted to be successful. There was always, like, because of my football background, sports are seasonal. And so I started to see this trend where high school sports, their coaches were not wanting them to go train at John Madsen Performance. In fact, if like kids had to not tell their coach that they were training with me, because their coach would think that was, you know, going to break their culture. And I started to see this trend with every sport, but I was very football heavy because of my background. So literally when football season started in late July to November, like my business just almost crashed every single year. And so, you know, not wanting that to happen, I saw this ad by Hormozy and I was like, dude, like if I could just get adults during this time period, then I could not go broke in this fourth quarter. And then the football kids will all come back and I'll be okay. I'll make it out. And so I just saw an ad. I was like really compelled. I signed up, and then I saw that you were in the program, and I was like super nervous because it was the most money I've ever spent in my life on a mentor. I'm like, dude, is it like, I hope I just didn't get scammed out of money. Like,
Got
and you're
you.
like, bro, you're going to make so much money. You're like, just do what he says. And so you told me your numbers, and I'm like, dude, if he can do it, I can do it. And I just literally followed the system. And for a minute, you know how the wild, wild west was back in, you know, those
Insane.
days. It was like,
Insane.
dude, it was like we were getting leads for 50 cents. And it was like, if I knew what I knew now, dude, it would have been crazy. But yeah, that was my first like aha moment of I could actually bring somebody into my gym that didn't know I existed based on marketing, rather than not just, oh, my buddy, you know, come to my buddy John's gym, a referral system. It was like I could use marketing to attract people into my gym to purchase with me that don't even know I exist. And that was just such a big aha moment. And then from that time, I started to see another trend within the online space. And so for a couple years, I like kind of dabbled in it, wanted to scale online. But ultimately, when my daughter was born 4 years ago, I knew that I could not be the gym owner that was waking up at 4 a.m, training people at 5 a.m, and then not getting home until like 9 o'clock at night. Like, couldn't do it, wouldn't do it. And so I knew I had a certain lifestyle that I wanted to achieve. And I also knew that I didn't want to sacrifice my freedom. And so the online fitness model was really born in that, you know, 4 years ago period, where I just narrowed into like the people that I really resonate with, which are driven, high performance entrepreneurs who are doing big things, who like are supremely motivated individuals already, who might be like 8s, 9s, and 10s in business, but for whatever reason, like their fitness is suffering. So I just spoke to that demographic, and like now my business is full of very successful people who want me to just kind of make the system automatic, but I already have supremely driven individuals, which for me, if I'm going to be in the fitness industry, I can't work with people who are not motivated. It'll drive me bananas. So I just created a business that I loved and scaled it pretty big online.
You know what's funny? So first off, if you guys are not following John, like go follow John on Instagram. And obviously I follow John. I've been following him for a long time. But I've been in the fitness industry for 10 years, like I said earlier, and the transformations he has, like the physical transformations he has, are really they're actually mind blowing. But I think there's something that really important that you hit on, that is that you found your dream avatar, right? You found your dream client, and you attacked that client. You spoke to that client, and your messaging has been something that I've, like, when I was in the fitness industry, I mimicked your stuff. I'd be like, you sent me your funnels, your messaging, and I would try to mimic it from a copy standpoint, but it never worked for me because I never actually dialed in my ideal client, my avatar. And I can never speak to them the way that you speak to your client. And, you know, in any sort of business, like that's always the dream, is like to talk to your client better. Like you're basically already in their head, having the conversation they're having, and you're telling them, like, oh my gosh, this guy knows me. And that's something that you've done an amazing job of. I actually haven't seen anybody in the fitness industry specifically do a better job than you in that. And so I just gotta give you props to that. But your story along the way is what really is inspiring, and I hope people like start to see the trends. And it's funny because like it was never an option to not be successful. Like that's the underlying thing that I see. It was no longer an option. It was just like, how, you were committed. It's like, how was I gonna make it happen? And it started all the way from, you know, getting a trainer, to trying to play basketball, to walking on, to playing undrafted, to starting a gym for athletes, to doing a brick and mortar, to now doing what you're doing. And I know you have, you know, big, you're just getting started. Like you're just getting started. You're starting to figure out the game, and you're doing an amazing job at it. So that was my like love for you on that. So back to the question here, or a question I have for you. So when it comes to online training, most people don't understand what online training is, right? Until 2020 happened, most people didn't even know that there was such a thing as online training. So describe to me, like, if I say, John, like, I'm motivated, I'm disciplined, I'm someone who wants to make a dramatic change, like, you can tell me what to do and I'll just do it. Like, what does online training actually look like?
Yeah, the way that we've set it up, man, is I knew that like my avatar doesn't necessarily need somebody to hold their hand at the gym, right? Like, and as a trainer, you get this. It's like if somebody wanted me to personal train them, it's like I'm like holding a clipboard and I'm telling them what to do. I'm like, dude, stick 1,000 needles in my eye. I never want to do that again. It was fun while it lasted. It served its purpose. I have 10,000 hours of experience doing it. But I realized my dream avatar, they're the guys that are traveling. They're the guys that are, doing real estate deals. They're the guys that are out there and they're in pursuit. They're already going to the gym on their own. They don't need anybody to tell them to go to the gym. They're already going there, but they're doing really dumb stuff like buying Pelotons, and they're doing Orange Theory workouts, and they're like doing the new thing because they're entrepreneurs and they want to have an edge. And I'm like, guys, you don't need to do you can do that stuff if you want. You don't actually even need to train the way that I like to train. But here's the deal. I'm going to create workouts based on your lifestyle, based on whether you have access to a full gym, whether you have a garage gym, or whether you just have some dumbbells, right? Whatever you're like, I'll tell you what you should do, but I'll work within those constraints. Good news for you. You only need to work out 3 or 4 times a week. But here's the deal. I'm going to teach you how to eat in a way that is scientifically proven to not work unless you don't do it. And if you learn it the way that I'm going to teach it, you're going to then be able to have a lot of freedom with food. You don't have to be like your buddies who are ordering salads out every single time they go out. You don't have to give up carbs or, eat a bunch. Like you don't have to go vegan, whatever documentary you watched. I'm just going to show you how to eat like an adult, and like, we're going to get you shredded. Oh, and so like that avatar was like, awesome. I just go to the gym. I know exactly what to do. Sets, reps, rest intervals. I got a video of John doing an exercise. If I don't know what he's talking about, I have 2-way messaging to a coach who's always there for me. And every single week I get a check-in to check on progress. And that's my accountability system. And so from there, like that avatar really resonates with that, because it's like, they don't have to put any extra time into doing anything. They just have to stop focusing on that 80% of the stuff that they were focused on that's getting them 20% of the results, and focus on the 20% of the stuff that I'm going to tell them to focus on to get 80% of the results. And once they see those results, like, again, my superpower is instilling the belief that they could actually look far better than they ever thought possible, but then getting them to buy into the idea that it's worth it. Where most programs are like, oh yeah, great job, you lost 20 pounds, man, I'm super pumped. I'm like, no, like, we're pursuing excellence, right? My company is called Suprahuman, which means that we're not comparable to average. And so I get them to buy into the culture. Like the culture now is built, but now people come in and that culture just like, it makes people hungry for not just a little bit of result, but to go all the way. And so I'm just supremely happy that I was able to build it that way, because like, Logan, in the fitness industry, if you're working with the wrong people, it's like it's the most energy draining industry you could possibly find yourself in if you're working with the wrong people. When I found my people, it's like I'm energized by them. They're energized by me. And that's why we get results. It's not because we have some secret. Like there's a million coaches teaching the exact same thing that I'm teaching, but they don't get the buy-in from their client that I get. And as long as I get that buy-in, like, we're going to far surpass anybody else's results, not because we're scientific geniuses, just because it's not rocket science actually. And they ultimately just need to buy into the fact that it's worth it.
And that goes back to your message being spot on, and because they believe in you so much that if you tell them to eat shit, like, they will eat shit, right? And I think that's ultimately what you need.
Yeah, dude, if I could eat shit and get jacked, I would probably eat shit.
So anyway, it's, again, if anybody who is, entrepreneurship, a lot of people who watch this are entrepreneurs. Like, people come to me all the time because, we talked about this before we got on, is that I'm no longer in the fitness industry, and the reason why I'm not is I couldn't find my people. I couldn't find the people who gave me energy. And so I just decided that, being real estate was what gave me energy. So, but people reach out to me all the time. It's like, hey, ask me training questions, ask me about coaching, and you know what? Go talk to John, because John is your person. John is the entrepreneur whisperer, and it's not my game anymore. So I just appreciate you for being able to find that message. I really do, because it took me 10 years and I couldn't figure it out, and I'm so grateful for you that you could figure it out and you're doing so well with it. And now, like we talked about, this show is a lot about entrepreneurs who watch this. And so let's talk a little about the economics behind your business and kind of what you have going on as far as like, what does the business look like, staff members, employees, clients, if you want to get into like what it does revenue wise. I know we've chatted a little bit about it. Like, it's like you have the biggest online business that I've personally know from people who I know in this industry. But again, feel free to share whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, man. Awesome. So we had a really epic run. Like 3 years ago, my goal was $1 million. I just wanted to make $1 million. Right? Like that. I think that entrepreneurs, like that's like the 4-minute mile for us a little bit. And I remember 3 years ago, tax return said 985,000, and it was like, it wasn't even close for 3 quarters. But then I just hit a message and we started ramping it up, and I hired salespeople, and I figured that, I took myself out of fulfillment. I got sales team. So I took myself out of sales and I started focusing on building a business. And so we ended the year really strong. I was a little disappointed I didn't hit the goal, but then we took that 985, and then we did over 3 million the next year. So we like 3x. And then the next year we doubled again. And so like right now we're kind of in this, I would call it a little plateau that I'm getting ready to bust out of. It's like 400, 500K per month. We've invested a lot back into the infrastructure. We have 10 or 11 coaches. We have a fulfillment team. We have a sales team. So the cool part now is like, I'm competing with a lot of people that kind of do it on the side, right? Which is really exciting for me. It's like they can get a couple clients, but like now with all the investment back in and human capital and other stuff that we brought in, it's like now a person comes in and our systems are just so dialed, like the experience is repeatable every single time, right? And I'm excited because that's really hard to compete with. Another thing I'm really excited about is that Facebook leads are super expensive, and that scares the crap out of everybody. And so I'm relentless in that game, and I know the numbers, so I can continue to gobble up market share. So right now we are a little bit stuck around that, but the cool part, I don't know a coaching business like that's only service based that has done much more than what we're doing now. And I realize that most people make that million and then they want to teach other trainers how to do it because it's far easy. Like it's far easier to like do that than it is to go deep into the business. Yeah. Where I'm actually in love with the Suprahuman brand and what it represents. And so, we're going to go into like lifestyle apparel, which is awesome, right? We already have a very large customer base. And then also some pretty awesome supplements that are on the horizon too, because I do know companies that did a lot more millions than we did, but they were probably, 20% coaching service and 80% product. And so I'm really interested in, and I have some mentors lined up that are going to walk me down that road. So I think there's big things coming for Supra. Like I said, we've just begun, and I'm excited to continue to grow. I would mention this too. Like in the past, I think all of those stories leading up until probably like this last year, well, I'd probably say about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was driven by significance too. Like, yeah, I love football, but I wanted people to know who I was, right? And like, whether that's good or not good, like my motivation was to be somebody, right? But now my motivation is not that. Like, I'm cool with whatever. I just want to, like, I'm motivated to tap into the most excellent version of myself. And so whatever the revenue numbers are at the end of the year, whether we're stagnant or not stagnant, like I'm supremely happy just pursuing excellence and getting better every day. So it's kind of shifted to this motivation towards just excellence within. Don't care about outsiders looking in. Where before it was like all about like what that validation was going to do for me. So that's just been a magical part of my personal development journey where I felt that shift to just be like, dude, just go see what you can do and stop worrying about everything outside of you.
So I want to touch on this because you talk a little bit about mentorship and your personal development journey. And so tell us some of the mentors who have maybe helped you get from this maybe $1 million a year mark all the way up to like $6 million a year in business. Was it specifically business mentors? Was it mindset mentor? Like what sort of people have had an impact in helping you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so there was quite a few business mentors where like I was building skill set, right? Like I had to learn how to write. I had to learn how to get on podcasts. I had to learn how to speak. I had to learn like human nature, right? Like marketing and sales. So there was a lot of skills that I was building up, just like constantly gobbling up because I was willing to invest in myself, where I wasn't getting the return on that as I thought I should, right? but I didn't know, like I was just grabbing those skill sets for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I got to this point where I'm like, I'm so capable. I know I'm so much more capable than what my results are. Why haven't I broke through? And so then I started searching for mentors in this mindset space. And so I got introduced to he's one of my best friends, a partner in some of the stuff we do. His name is William Lamb. He doesn't have a big following, but he literally, right now, it's $500,000 to work with him for a year one-on-one. And when I got to him, though, as an early adopter, I had to write him a $40,000 check for one-on-one, right? He didn't have the results that he has now. And so that was like 3 years ago. And I was like, all I knew about him is he was some mindset wizard guy and he was going to reprogram my brain. And, he knew some NLP and some hypnotherapy and stuff. And like, I didn't know much about him, but I had 2 friends just be like, John, you got to meet this guy. And so I met him and I was like, okay, I wrote that check. I had $50,000 in my bank account at the time. And I wrote a $40,000 check just betting on myself, right? And my wife's like, "You're crazy," and I'm like, "I know, right? Like, I know, but I know I can do this. I know I can do it, right?" And so I just went on this journey with him, and it was just like I started to understand like what was holding me back. I started to understand, some of the fears, some of the negative emotions, right? And so when I say I have relentless self-belief, I did, but just like anybody, there was still doubt in some of those moments, especially in business, right? I didn't just walk around like never feeling doubt. So there was things that I was afraid to just be authentically me, and I didn't know why, right? And my business couldn't take off until I could look in the camera and just be unapologetic, authentic me. And so up until that point, I was like just trying to copy everybody, and I was falling flat on my face in my marketing. So I worked with William, and we just like we got rid of the negative emotions. I started to learn about how my perception will create my reality and all this incredible stuff. And at first I was like, I don't know, this guy is kind of out there. But then like literally my business went from 20,000 a month to 100,000 a month really quickly, and I was like, whoa. Right? Like it took 10 years to get to 100,000 a month. And then we doubled that like immediately. And so I literally just he helped me rewire the way that I thought. And so, I give him a ton of credit because a lot of times, we just want to talk about mindset, which mindset is a whole lot of it. But I don't want people to forget, like I had culminated a ton of skill set that was kind of locked up. So the mindset allowed me to just kind of unleash all that stuff that was inside of me. And that's why I could grow exponentially fast. Sometimes, and we teach some of this stuff in some of our events, right? Like I needed people to learn what he taught me. So we created an event series where we have a 6-day event coming up next week. And we teach all the stuff that I went through because I'm like, I need my people to go through that. Yeah. Now, I'm really careful to tell them, like, look, if you don't have the skill set yet, like you're not just going to pop off results like I did. But if you do this in tandem and you build your mindset and you're willing to invest in your skill sets too, like the sky's the limit, right? So I'm supremely excited about like that part of what we do just because it helped me so much.
What you said right there is something that I like to stress to new entrepreneurs and give them that expectation awareness that there is so many skill sets that you must not just master, but you must just be aware of that you're not even aware of right now that you need to learn. You need to get good at, and you can get good at marketing and sales and fulfillment. But if your mindset is holding you back, then you basically can't utilize those skill sets because you have stuff going up here. And that's like the example you use, but most people don't actually have the hard skills of marketing or sales. And like you just actually walk through your whole journey of like you actually learning the skills of marketing and then the skills of sales and then fulfillment. And then it was mindset. And I think if you as an entrepreneur can understand that expectation that there is so many skill sets that you must learn, master, and it's the one thing that's holding you back, then all of a sudden you get it, then it looks like you popped off. Then it looks like that one thing was the thing, but it wasn't because you had built so many different things in the background. It was just that one thing was your biggest limiter. And as soon as you plugged the hole, you were able to you were the blossom, like the beautiful butter, or like the beautiful flower you always were, right?
That's right, man. It's so true. I mean, sometimes people get this misconception like they're just going to go, fix their mindset, and then they have, like you said, no hard skills, and it's like it's not going to work either, right? So both of those things are supremely important, and then the other ingredient is you got to take action, right? You're not just going to meditate in the corner of a room and post vision boards and have things magically come to you, right? There's got to be that skill and that action that backs up that belief and that mindset, that you can create those results. And so I always want people to know like the whole story and not just parts of it.
Yeah.
It's really important that we say that, because you mentioned this, you briefly said it. It took you, what was it, 10 years to basically get to the point where you were at 100K a month.
Yep.
A lot of people would have looked at, okay, let's just say you did your first 100K a month. A newcomer in your audience would have just been like, oh wow, he just showed up out of nowhere and just did 100K a month. It was that easy. The reality is, you had to go through trial and tribulation for 10 years prior to that, building not just skill sets and your knowledge base, but the reality is building resilience, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important things out there, to be able to just keep getting back up, right? This entire time we've talked about this. It's such an amazing pattern with you, where there's been obstacles in front of you. There's been brick walls in front of you, but every single time you've either found a way to pivot or break straight through. And then you had 10 long freaking years. Guys, 10 years is a very long time. I'm in my mid-20s. That's basically like half my life. That's a very long time to be, trying to figure this out to get to the point where you're at 100K. But then it's almost like you found that final little puzzle piece. And then, like you said, you got it plugged in because you got the right mentor in place, which is it's a hack. It's a freaking hack. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because without that mentor, it might take another 5 years, might take another 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. I don't know. But 10 years, then you get your 100K. And I think you said you doubled it like right after that.
Really quick. Yeah. Like I was like, he's really big on rewarding yourself for hitting, specific goals. Right. And so he's like, what's your reward going to be when you hit 200K? And in my mind, I was like, well, dude, it literally took me 10 years to hit 100K. So like, I could think about this. It might take, maybe another year or two, who knows. Right. And then like 2 months later, we skip 200. We go from 100 to like, we were like at 187, and I missed 200 2 months in a row. And I was like, dang it. Like it was, 28 days in February. If there was 3 more days, like the billing would have come and I would have hit 200K, but it didn't hit it. But then in March we hit 365. And so I was like, whoa, dude, like there's quantum leaps that people can take in business, but it's not going to happen probably year one, right? It's going to, and if it does, like you probably be a little bit aware of that, because, what goes up super fast might need to be a little bit cautious of. And so it was literally like kind of a hockey stick moment that I felt, which if you're in the game long enough, entrepreneurs, like, and you're resilient enough and you're consistent enough and you have the drive, you'll feel that moment. I was waiting for mine, and it was an awesome feeling to feel. But now, I mean, dude, it's going to be another quantum leap soon. Right. And I'm like, I can't wait for that one too. At the same time, just got to enjoy the journey and keep, the only reason I'm not there yet is because there's skill sets and mindsets that I still haven't cultivated to take me to that, next level. So now I'm just a forever student, forever learner. And I'm in love with what Logan said. I'm in love with the game, right? To me, it's a game, and I just enjoy getting better,
There's just levels to the game, and people who are listening, again, like you've heard all of John's story, like I think some people can connect with that. And then as you move into, again, now, doing $6 million a year, doing $500,000 a month, there's levels to the game, right? And so, John, do you still have doubts? Is there still some doubts that creep into your mind, even at $500,000 a year, even with all the success you had? Do you still have doubts?
Yeah, dude. There's always things that's going to there's going to, like, no matter who you are, there's going to be things that push up against your comfort zone. Right. And it's like our minds want us to be like safe and efficient. It's like they want us to just sit in that comfort. And so if I think of like a really big goal, or I get pushed on a goal, right, it's like I can feel that twinge of doubt if the goal is like whoa, could I really do that? And then a little bit of doubt sets in, right? But now I know it's like I can focus on the doubt, or I can focus on the goal, right? Most people are always focused. They're supremely focused on why they can't do something and on the doubt. Where if I feel that, I'm very self-aware of it, and I'll refocus on what I want to happen instead of what I don't want to happen, right? Most people are walking around. They know exactly what they don't want.
Yep.
I walk around and I'm supremely focused on what I do want.
Such a hack, right? And actually, I wear this little bracelet I got from one of my mentors, Chris Crone, who John knows as well. And like the concept behind everything goes my way, just like you're always looking for, like, you basically put yourself in the fire, and that's going back to what you talked about with the advice of you got to take action, right? You got to take action because you got to put yourself in a situation you can make a decision. Most people want to make a decision first and then take action. Like, the decision happens after the action is taken, because all of a sudden now you have, should I play basketball or should I play football? Right? Should I quit football or should I try to walk on? Should I gain 20 pounds to be a tight end, or should I try to come up with some bullshit excuse? Right? And like, these are the things that you've actually put yourself in the situations to make a decision. You're always making a decision to, like, how does this go my way? How do I get to my end goal? Right? And I think that's something that has been like, that's the biggest takeaway from you, is that you've been the everything goes my way from day one. You're like, how do I make this happen?
Yeah, man. And I think, like, I'll probably leave you with this. This is a thought that I've had in the past, where I believe that, like, a person, like, you're committed to something. And so some of you listening, you're really committed to survival. You're really committed to your comfort. We're really supremely committed to it, because if your results was to go down a little bit, you'd find a way to get back up to where you're comfortable, right? That's where your thermostat is set. But you can't be committed to comfort and committed to excellence at the same time. And I looked at my wife yesterday. I'm like, I'm committed to a really big life. I'm like, I told her, I looked her in the eyes. I'm like, I'm committed to a big life. And that means I can't be committed to a comfortable life at the same time. So all of my decisions are going to be based from this viewpoint of a big life, of an excellent life. And that trickles down into every single decision that you make, where most people are, like I said, really supremely committed to just surviving and not supremely committed to how excellent they could be.
So, John, thank you. Honestly, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing all the little stories, and being honestly so aware that you can tell the story as good as you can today. And I think that's something that I've learned about people, is like some people just, they're not even aware going through it, so they can't tell the story to you. And like, you tell it with emotion, the feeling, you remember what it was like in those moments. And I think that makes for a powerful storyteller, and someone who can communicate well to actually be an influencer and help other people's, because they're aware of their feelings, their emotions. They're able to communicate that to the others who are going through that, where they were 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or maybe even 1 year ago. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you guys for having me, man. Had a blast, man. Super excited that you thought of me. Honored to be here, and just want to thank you for giving me the time.
I have to say this as we're wrapping up, guys, 100%. Echoing what Logan says, guys, first and foremost, if you guys aren't following John on Instagram at John Madsen Official, you need to get your lives together and do something great for yourselves. But if you want to connect with, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to become a high performing entrepreneur, this is something I learned this past weekend. Something that really became a revelation to me. I cannot have excellence in my business life if it comes at the expense of other facets of my life. That includes my family, if you're married, it includes, your relationship with your spouse. It also supremely includes your health, whether it's with your fitness, with your nutrition, whether it's spiritual, emotional, it all goes hand in hand. Like, thriving in excellence is a holistic thing, and it has to happen. So anyone that wants to excel as an investor, as an entrepreneur in every aspect of life, I think connecting with someone like John is something that will help you get there so much sooner. It is one of those hacks that we talked about 100%. John, I have to say this. I always try to look for at least one very impactful thing from each guest that we have on, because they all come on and just say something that just resonates with me in an amazing way. But from you, I have to say, it's being relentless in my self-belief. That's going to stick with me for a very long time. It's an absolute honor to be able to share this space with you. It's an honor to get to know you and your story. With the relentless self-belief that you have, I just can't wait to see what the next 10 years look like for you. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you, brother. Dude, so appreciate that.
It's awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for being on here, John. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your friendship. Look forward to connecting with you guys a little more. But for this episode of the Origin Story, we are out. Bye, guys.